The radical power of softness, redefining success on our own terms. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm truly honored to stand before you to share some transformative insights that have the potential to reshape how we think about success, power, and fulfillment in our lives. Recently, I had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Toshuna Hanna, a visionary whose work has sparked a quiet revolution across corporate America and beyond. Toshuna isn't just breaking glass ceilings, she's questioning why those ceilings were built in the first place. Through her groundbreaking leadership programs and deeply personal approach to mentorship, she has liberated thousands of Black women from the crushing weight of performative strength, helping them reclaim their wholeness in spaces that often demand their fragmentation. Her philosophy has transformed not just individual lives, but entire organizational cultures, proving that authentic leadership creates ripples that change systems. What I'm about to share with you today challenges one of our most deeply entrenched cultural myths: the idea that success requires relentless hustle, emotional detachment, and sacrificing our well being on the altar of achievement. This is especially true for Black women, who have historically been expected to be strong beyond measure, resilient beyond reason, and tireless beyond human capacity. The conventional wisdom tells us that to succeed, particularly as Black women in professional spaces, we must be twice as good, work twice as hard, and show half the emotion. We're told that softness is a liability, that vulnerability is weakness, and that our worth is measured by our productivity rather than our humanity. But what if everything we've been taught about success is fundamentally flawed? What if the path to true power and fulfillment isn't about hardening ourselves against the world, but about embracing our softness as a revolutionary act? This is the profound truth that emerged from my conversation with Toshuna. Her insights revealed that the real paradox of power isn't that strength comes from force, it's that our greatest strength often emerges from the very qualities we've been conditioned to suppress: our empathy, our intuition, our need for rest, our emotional intelligence, and yes, our softness. Toshuna shared a powerful affirmation that has guided her journey. My softness is not my weakness, it is my superpower. This isn't just a feel good mantra, it represents a radical reimagining of what power can look like. Let me share a story that illustrates this transformation. Toshuna told me about Amara, a brilliant executive who had built her career on being the hardest working, most resilient person in every room. Amara prided herself on never showing vulnerability, never asking for help, and pushing through exhaustion as a badge of honor. She was successful by conventional standards: promotions, recognition, financial rewards. But she was also profoundly depleted. Her health was suffering. Her relationships were strained. And most troubling, she had lost touch with the passion and purpose that had once driven her. When Amar began working with Toshuna, she initially resisted the invitation to embrace her softness. I didn't get here by being soft, she insisted, but gradually, through intentional practices of self care, boundary setting, and authentic expression, Amara began to integrate the parts of herself she had long suppressed. The results were remarkable. Rather than diminishing her effectiveness, embracing her softness enhanced it. She became a more empathetic leader, a more creative strategist, and a more influential presence in her organization. Most importantly, she rediscovered joy and meaning in her work. I used to think power meant never letting them see you sweat, Amara told Toshuna. Now I understand that real power is having the courage to be fully human in spaces that expect you to be a machine. Let's consider what happens when we perpetually operate in survival mode, when we're constantly armored up, braced for impact, ready to prove ourselves worthy in spaces that weren't designed with us in mind. The cost is enormous. Our bodies absorb the stress, our spirits diminish, our creativity narrows, our relationships suffer. And perhaps most insidiously, we begin to measure our worth by standards that were never meant to honor our wholeness. As Toshuna eloquently put it, the strongest thing I ever did was put down the cape of the strong Black woman and pick up the crown of a woman who deserves care, especially her own. This insight challenges us to consider, what if the true measure of success isn't how much we can endure, but how authentically we can exist? What if power isn't about dominance, but about integration, bringing our full, complex, multidimensional selves to everything we do? The data supports this perspective. Research consistently shows that emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage our emotions and connect empathetically with others, is a stronger predictor of leadership success than technical expertise or IQ. Studies reveal that companies with more diverse leadership teams, particularly those including women of color, outperform their less diverse counterparts. And medical research continues to demonstrate the devastating health impacts of chronic stress and the strong Black woman schema on Black women's bodies. But this isn't just about statistics, it's about liberation. When Toshuna shared the story of Maya, a community organizer who had been running on empty for years, I was deeply moved. Maya had internalized the belief that her worth was tied to her sacrifice, that to be effective in her justice work, she needed to give until there was nothing left. The result was predictable: burnout, health issues, and a diminishing sense of the very purpose that had once fueled her. Through her work with Toshuna, Maya learned that rest isn't a reward for productivity, it's a prerequisite for sustainable impact. She began incorporating radical self care practices into her daily routine: morning meditation, boundaries around her time and energy, regular retreats to restore her spirit. She built what Toshuna calls a softness circle, a community of people who saw and celebrated her wholeness, who encouraged her authenticity, and who reminded her of her worth beyond her achievements. The transformation was profound. Maya didn't abandon her commitment to justice work, she deepened it. But now she led from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. Her creativity flourished, her strategic thinking expanded, and perhaps most significantly, she began modeling for younger activists a sustainable approach to change making that didn't require martyrdom. I realized Maya told Toshuna that by perpetuating the myth that change requires self sacrifice, I was actually reinforcing the very systems I was trying to dismantle. True revolution begins with revolutionizing our relationship with ourselves. The journey toward embracing our softness isn't easy, especially for Black women who have been conditioned by both cultural expectations and practical necessity to be strong beyond measure. The strong Black woman trope didn't emerge from nowhere. It developed as a survival response to centuries of oppression, discrimination, and being systematically denied care and protection. But as Tashuna powerfully articulated, what began as a survival strategy cannot sustain us as a life philosophy. At some point, we must transition from surviving to thriving. This transition requires both internal and external work. Internally, it means unlearning the belief that our value is tied to our productivity or our capacity to endure hardship. It means giving ourselves permission to rest, to feel, to be vulnerable, to ask for help, and to prioritize our well being without guilt. Externally, it means challenging systems and cultures that expect superhuman strength from Black women while denying them basic care and consideration. It means creating new models of leadership that value emotional intelligence, empathy, and authenticity alongside more traditional metrics of success. Toshuna shared a powerful practice that has transformed her relationship with softness. Each morning, she asks herself three questions. What do I need today? How can I show up as my full self? Where can I choose ease over struggle? These simple questions represent a radical reorientation towards self honor rather than self sacrifice. In a world that profits from your exhaustion, Toshuna noted, rest becomes a revolutionary act. In spaces that demand your fragmentation, wholeness becomes an act of resistance. This perspective invites us to consider how embracing our softness might not just transform our individual lives, but might actually change the systems and cultures we inhabit. When we refuse to perpetuate the myth that success requires superhuman strength and endless hustle, we create space for more sustainable, humane ways of working, leading, and achieving. The revolutionary insight from my conversation with Toshuna is that softness, far from being a liability, may be our greatest untapped resource for creating meaningful change in our lives and in the world. This doesn't mean abandoning ambition or lowering our standards. It means pursuing excellence from a place of wholeness rather than fragmentation. It means defining success on our own terms rather than accepting definitions that require us to diminish or deny essential parts of ourselves. As Toshuna powerfully stated, I'm not interested in leaning into systems that weren't designed for my thriving. I'm interested in creating new systems where my softness, my intuition, my empathy, and my unique perspective as a Black woman are recognized as assets rather than liabilities. This perspective invites us to ask ourselves some profound questions. What would my life look like if I stopped performing strength and started embodying wholeness? How might my leadership transform if I brought my full, authentic self to it? What new possibilities might emerge if I define success on my own terms rather than accepting definitions that require me to fragment myself? The journey toward embracing our softness isn't a straight line, it's a practice, one that requires patience, compassion, and community. There will be moments when survival mode feels necessary. There will be spaces where vulnerability feels too risky. There will be times when the old patterns of overworking and people pleasing reassert themselves. But as Toshuna reminded me, the goal isn't perfection. The goal is integration, bringing more and more of our authentic selves to more and more areas of our lives. So today, I challenge each of you to begin your own radical softness revolution. Start by asking yourself, where am I performing strength at the expense of my wholeness? What would it look like to bring more authenticity, more vulnerability, more of my full humanity to my work, my relationships, my leadership? What parts of myself have I been conditioned to suppress? And what might be possible if I reclaimed them? Remember that this journey isn't just for you, though your well being alone would be reason enough. When you embrace your softness as strength, You create permission for others to do the same. You model a more sustainable, more human way of being in the world. You become a living challenge to systems that profit from our exhaustion and fragmentation. In the powerful words of Toshuna Hanna, the world doesn't need more exhausted women proving their worth through sacrifice. The world needs more whole women leading from their center, creating from their overflow, and transforming systems through their authentic power. This is our invitation and our challenge to reimagine power, to redefine success, and to reclaim the parts of ourselves we've been conditioned to suppress. It's time to step into a new era where our softness becomes our strength, our authenticity becomes our authority, and our wholeness becomes our greatest contribution to a world desperately in need of new models of power and success. The revolution begins not with changing the world, but with changing our relationship to ourselves. And that revolution begins today with you, with me, with all of us daring to be soft in a world that demands we be hard, daring to be whole in systems that profit from our fragmentation, daring to redefine power on our own terms. Thank you.